All right, friends, welcome back again to another episode of Tactical Enlightenment. Our YouTube channel is dedicated to tactics and dedicated to Bannerlord, and we are going to follow up our Novice to Napoleon tactics series with some offensive tactics here. We are going to play the Sturgeons, and both sides have tier 3 through 6 units, with the exception of one thing. I've added Lake Rat Wreckers instead of the Sturgeon Spearmen, a tier 4 for tier 4. That way these armies have roughly equal quality, but we have a little bit more tactical availability with some javelins. Now we're going to fight the Imperials here to start. We're slightly outnumbered in this series, and like I mentioned at the outset, this is offensive tactics. Now we're going to try 3 different modes. We're going to try a heavy infantry army, a heavy archer army, and then a heavy cavalry army, and try to defeat the enemy with tactics in all 3 situations. First, to set a baseline, we'll show you how difficult it is here to attack a force that's entrenched and playing defense. The Imperials here, they have themselves a nice little ridge, and this is the Sergeants playing. We will let the AI slam against the AI and see how they do. Now you can already hear us getting peppered by arrows and crossbow bolts as we close for battle. That's already swinging the battle in their favor. The enemy infantry is right behind the archers. Now there's a gigantic mess. You know what? I'm not going to narrate too much about this gigantic AI mess. It is what it is. It's a messy battle. However, because they're defending, because they're able to pull their archers uphill, it does look like the Imperials are going to win, and they're going to win handily. They're now charging the back of our archers. In fact, our pathetic captain here is blowing the sad horn. He says our plan is to fall back and fight another day. And that's all you need to know, right? The AI trying to attack here got destroyed. Let's see if we can do better than what the AI just did. Now, like I said, we will do heavy infantry to start. About 43% of our army is infantry, and then we have some archers and cavalry. I would not recommend an army exclusively of infantry, etc. We're going to have a mixed army for this series. That said, I will show you the ineptitude, unfortunately, of heavy cavalry in this episode, or at least I expect that'll be the outcome. Now, this very first episode, we're going to use extremely simple tactics here. We're going to have 3 divisions. I'm going to move this 1st Infantry Division of infantry towards the center, and I can use that hill over there on the left to come over the enemy with cavalry and archers and flank the enemy, right? This is a very basic tactic. I don't know if this is going to be successful. I have my suspicions. And the bottom line is that if you only use 3 or maybe 4 divisions, you have much less chance of success in Bannerlord than if you use more than 3 divisions. And this episode should also demonstrate this fact. Now this 2nd and 3rd division, these are archers and heavy cavalry. We're going to lead in with heavy cavalry in shield wall. You're almost always going to be approaching your enemy in this kind of a situation in a shield wall. That is because they are going to be shooting at you, right? We're going to hold up these big round pizza oven, pizza plate sized shields that the Sturgeons have and push the way for our archers. Now, this is a flank, and the benefits of that are clear, right? We're going to be shooting the enemy from the side where not every unit has a shield. We'll be shooting shock troops. We'll be shooting archers from the side. Now, our infantry's getting attacked there. They're kind of harassing it with cavalry, but those are infantrymen, right? These guys are tough. These guys are born with scars, and they can handle a little cavalry charge. We're going to move them up systematically. They're about 5 rows deep, and that helps them weather the storm. Over here, again, the archers are spreading out behind our cavalry, and we're just going to systematically shove this cavalry forward, this Sturgeon cavalry. They have some javelins. The Sturgeon cavalry does, that is. And so we'll get them within range, and they can throw javelins. Now, I'm actually going to stick these archers almost behind the enemy here, right? We're really turning the enemy flank with archers. And, of course, we have to protect them. That's why the cavalry's in the front. Now, to launch our attack, what I'm actually going to do here is just drag our cavalry right through their formation. I told them to follow me, F1, F2, and we're going to drive right through. Now, our job here is to run down these little pathetic archers of the enemy that are trying to find a space to shoot. We're not going to let them, right? We're basically going to chase these guys wherever they go. The infantry, I didn't tell you, but they are charging right over there. The 1st infantry is boring in. And this is effectively a charge, right? With our 3rd cavalry here, we are charging. Now, there's a couple main advantages we're deriving from this. First, it's chaos for the enemy, right? They have infantry charging their front, cavalry charging through their ranks, and the second big advantage we have is our archers are, for the most part, unimpeded. They have some cavalry fucking with them as well, but we have way more cavalry in the enemy's backfields than the enemy has in ours. That means most of our archers are shooting. On top of that, of course, they have a nice location right to the enemy's flank. You can see there's like a dozen cavalry over here, but a lot of them are getting killed because we have so many archers in a good position. So the archers are working, the infantry's driving in. The infantry is going to get killed, right? They're charging this huge mass of the enemy, and I'm just hoping to keep these archers occupied long enough with this cavalry to swing the battle in our favor. Like I said, there's not a lot of tactics in a situation like this. We'll jump our character right into the F10 mode, and we will speed these episodes along. We will use the RTS mod extensively, both for the overhead perspective and also to speed these battles up. I don't need this episode to be 2 hours long. Now, a lot of the enemy infantry looks like it's chasing after routing units or cavalry, or they themselves are routing, but this battle is over. How do I know that? Because our archers are in a superior position, and our archers critically are all together, right? So those guys are shooting everything in sight. Nothing's getting close to them. And indeed, this battle, it's basically all over except the attrition of the last handful of units. So we ended up surviving here with about 120, 130 units. Slightly outnumbered against a defensive opponent, and we were still successful. This isn't bad, right? This is viable. For you out there that can't use more than 3 divisions consistently in battle, that's an option for you. All right, so let's do some advanced tactics, right? We're going to do 2 different flanks, but what we're going to do is relatively simple, at least in concept. We're going to have 2 different armies. We're going to have a flanking army comprised of skirmishers. That's why I'm adding javelins and shields to this 6th division. We're going to have an archer division, and I think what I'll do for memory's sake and for your sake is I will put the even divisions together and the odd divisions together. So in the center, we'll have the 1st, 3rd, and 5th, and then on the flank, and probably it's going to be the right flank, we will have the 2nd Cavalry, and I've assigned those to be top cavalry. The 4th Archers, which are also assigned higher preference, right? I basically have a superior strong right flank, and that is because we are going to try to overwhelm the enemy from its flank. In the center, now I can't actually see the enemy, but in the center, we're going to drive the 1st and 3rd infantry, or 1st infantry rather, with the 3rd cavalry, and then archers behind them. It's very, very simple what we're doing here, but the movement of it is important. You need to move your units together. You need to have your archers behind your infantry and cavalry. Again, pretty simple. And then all we're going to do here is try to turn the enemy's flank at the top of the battlefield here. We're doing this because of elevation. If our archers are uphill, they'll be able to shoot over our units into the enemy's ranks. So again, forgive me for intermittently speeding up these battles with the RTS mod. We'll position the archers there and then the skirmishers right next to this cavalry line. In fact, we can attack this cavalry with our skirmishers. This cavalry is attacking our cavalry, kind of harassing our units. We can send our skirmishers in there to support these cavalrymen. Now, our cavalrymen are throwing javelins, right? They're not worthless here. In fact, the sturgeons, it's important to understand your advantages. We have more throwing weapons than the Imperials do, right? So it's good for our infantry to close and then stand there for a while they dump their throwing axes. You can see throwing axes flying everywhere. Javelins are flying everywhere, and we can try to repel this cavalry. This is just the first stage in this battle. Now we're moving this archer division all the way to the top here. Now you notice we're protected from archer fire because of these rocks. Now what we're going to do is slowly move up the infantry divisions, this 1st division and this 6th division of skirmishers, and we will combine these attacks in unison, right? The 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 6th division will all charge. Those 2 archer divisions are well positioned. In fact, as the infantry lines collide, this 4th division right next to me here is going to have really nice positioning to shoot down into their ranks, and that should be enough for a dramatic victory. And my character is falling down the hill here and getting stabbed like a dipshit. Try not to get killed. But you can now see what's happening with our archers. We have full flanking positions and uphill on the enemy, just as I had hoped, firing straight into their ranks. The enemy is now enveloped by our 2 infantry lines and cavalry lines. That's one of the advantages of flanking. Now, importantly, if these archers start spreading out and causing damage to us, we'll drag a cav line into them. Right now, it doesn't seem like it's necessary. I don't see their archers leaking out. They're kind of leaking out the bottom, but if they go that way, they're going to get shot. So we're actually just fine with that. And this battle is over. As an experienced Bannerlord player, I can tell you this battle is over. The enemy's wrapped up. Both of our archer divisions are untouched, and the enemy's getting mauled here. So if memory serves me right, we had about 120-ish survivors from our basic tactic fight the first time. Of course, the AI got destroyed, right? They crashed your car, your Tesla, into a wall, killed your wife. We take charge of the car here, and we drive like Dale Earnhardt. Actually, I guess he got killed in a car accident. We'll choose somebody else. And the enemy is routing as the death spam turns solidly green. And we didn't just win here with with these advanced tactics. We destroyed the enemy, right? We have half of our troops alive in a situation where we're outnumbered and the enemy took a defensive stance. All right, so infantry is what I would consider the middle tier difficulty for this situation. The easiest, the easiest way to defeat a defensive enemy is what we're going to do next. We're going to do heavy archer army. Even with these pathetic sturgeon archers, I think we're going to be able to absolutely shred the enemy here. Now, very similar, right? We're going to have two different flanks. However, because we have so many archers, I'm now going to combine archers with the skirmishers. What I've done is make a mixed infantry and archer division there in the 6th. The 5th and 4th, again, will be archers. I like to make one division stronger and one division weaker. It may not be necessary in this battle, but that's just a habit of mine. Let's see. And then again, we're going to have the 2nd and 3rd be cavalry lines. Again, those guys are almost strictly defensive at the beginning of the battle. They are screening our troops. They are acting like Marshal Murat would for Napoleon. Although in Bannerlord, in Napoleon's situation with Marshal Murat, the screening was done to make sure the enemy couldn't see our troops. In this case, of course, the AI sees everything. What it's screening our troops, though, is as we move up, as we move archers into position, our cavalry will protect our archers from being shot, right? They're standing in front of them like bodyguards, holding their shields up. All right, let's see what the enemy does here. It looks like they're heading towards the lower part of the map, which is not very smart. Even worse than that, they're forming the dreaded circle position. You can hear me sighing because this is just pathetic. The AI will do this sometimes if it thinks it has a bunch of archers it needs to protect, but this is a failed strategy. We're just going to roll with this, right? You guys are going to deal with this. You're going to deal with an enemy that forms this circle. Let me show you how not just to defeat this, but to completely obliterate it, right? Let's completely just trash this sad strategy here by the AI. What we're going to do is form sort of a C shape with our archers, right? The 4th on the left down here, the 5th in the center, and we're going to wrap the 6th all the way behind this circle, all the way over by those mountains. Now, before we move them, of course, we're going to move cavalry in front of them. I just mentioned that cavalry line acts as a screen. Any arrow shots will hit those guys. Any cavalry charges will be intercepted by those guys, right? That cavalry has a very important job. It may not be the most exciting. They may not get the most honor from it, but our archers sure thank them. Now, their cavalry lines, they have two different cav lines. In fact, one of their dipshit lines charged. That's okay. I've got the infantry down here to support this cav line in case they charge. And in the center there, the skirmishers protect the cavalry. In fact, it's symbiosis. This 6th division right here, we're going to stretch this out even further behind the enemy. And we're wrapping around them, right? Here's the other thing to know, and I've mentioned this before, especially in the Novice to Napoleon series. If the enemy has a formation, like they do right now, a set formation, and you inflict a bunch of losses, they will break out of their formation. I better mention this too. I'm actually going to make a bait division here with the 7th division. I just created this mid-battle. F3, F5 is the command to do that. Then I took them off their horse, which is F5, dismount. Now I'm just going to stick them in a square in the middle of the battlefield. Admittedly, some of these things I just do by nature. I've played so much Bannerlord. Admittedly, these are advanced tactics. We're doing that because I expect the enemy to break out of their formation. More accurately, is they will break out of their formation. And they do that once they suffer a significant amount of losses. The AI says, oh shit, this isn't working. Let's change something. And we know this. We're going to use that to our advantage. So the square there of infantry, the 7th division, motherfucker, try to stab me? I'll stab your friend then. 7th division is just sitting there, basically waiting for the enemy to attack it. Over here on the left flank, rather, our cavalry and infantry can sort of skirmish with the enemy cavalry, but the damage is being done by our archers here, right? We have archers and skirmishers wrapped completely around the enemy. In fact, I'm ignoring the enemy cavalry here, just moving our units forward, And that is because that was inevitable. They broke from their formation. They're now charging. And I'm just going to shove this square of high-end cavalry / infantry. It used to be cavalry. Now it's infantry. I'm just going to shove it in their mouth like a terrorist. Have this sock in your mouth, right? Have this ball. We're going to shove this in your mouth so you can't scream while you're killing you. Do some more sadistic shit. Now, our archers are trying to break loose here and spread out. We're not going to accept that, even though our archers would shoot them to pieces anyways. Let's drive cavalry right through these guys, right? Let's give them a nice little cavalry sandwich. We'll drive the third through on this side and then the second through on the other side. And all I'm going to do with these divisions is keep these archers occupied. Just like the last battle, we're just going to drive these guys through here, aggravate the shit out of the archers, keep them occupied, and this battle is going to be over very quickly. They're getting steamrolled down here by infantry and cavalry. Our square is doing a magnificent job of attracting enemy attention. All these infantrymen are getting shredded. They're getting shot from 3 different directions. They're routing. And this battle is over, right? I'm going to speed this up because not only is it over, this is a massacre, right? This is why this circle doesn't work. That is how you destroy a circle defense. And indeed, look at our power bar, right? We have 3/4 of our troops remaining. This is probably 390 troops survived, and we obtained about a 4-to-1 kill ratio here. That should be all you need to see. All right, now I'm sighing again because we're going to try the hardest, and this shouldn't be the hardest, right? We're going to take 50% of our army, so we'll have 250 some troops that are tier 5 and 6 cavalry, and we're going to try this. And believe it or not, this is actually harder than what I just showed you, right? It's much easier to do the battle I just showed you with archers or with infantry. Unfortunately, that is because that is how spear infantry work in the game. In fact, I feel a little rant coming at the end of this episode. I think we'll do a demonstration or two at the very end here just to show you how ineffective cavalry are. There are still guys out there that are forming their Bannerlord army today, full of heavy cavalry and sturgeon spearmen, or sturgeon hardened brigands, and trying to do battle. And unfortunately, you're going to suffer very poor results and wonder why. Probably you're probably like, how the fuck is Tactical Enlightenment winning? I've got all elite units, tier 5, tier 6 units, Drodzinic champions, and we're getting rolled. That is simply because these units, they don't work correctly. Now, to Tailworld's credit, they have acknowledged this, and supposedly they're going to make adjustments to the AI, the cavalry AI, in an upcoming patch. Right? That has been something they've talked about. In fact, by the time you're watching this episode, that may have already dropped, right? And this may be a moot point. That said, in the short term, this is how I'm going to try to use this cav division. We're actually going to take these guys, get them up close, and dismount a bunch of these cavalrymen, because unfortunately that's the reality. They actually fight better on foot than they do on horse. Now, a lot of fancy movement here, but this is all the same stuff as the previous 3 battles. That's why I'm not running my mouth telling you every single step, but basically we're moving our units up in a shield wall, infantry and the 2nd Division here right in the center, and we're just moving up systematically. Now, we've got 2 little tiny archer divisions, but we're still going to use them. Because archers are so effective in Bannerlord, we actually need these guys to win this battle. We're going to bring these guys in, protect them from arrows, and at least the good thing is they're heavily screened, right? We have all these highly defensive sturgeon units, and that's about the main use at this stage of heavy cavalry in Bannerlord. Now, heavy cavalry, I'm referring to spear cavalry. Your Jav cavalry, your Aserai Ferris, your Consguards, they don't need any improvements, right? Because they use throwing weapons and shooting weapons, they are deadly in Bannerlord. The AI for using spears with cavalry is just not optimal. Now, I made a whole episode of advanced tactics for this series, and admittedly, this is fairly advanced, but I think we'll do this more simplified version first. And you know, that brings up an interesting point. I think I'll hold it for the moment, but the reality is you can't defeat highly entrenched, very powerful armies that outnumber you when they're playing defense. That's not a situation you should be engaging in. Now we're going to start wrapping the enemy up like all these other battles, and you notice that the theme here, I almost always do it from higher up, right? We're trying to throw javelins down on the heads of the enemies. Again, we're wrapping up the enemy from the enemy's left. Now they're kind of charging cavalry through here. I'm going to try not to get killed. And what we're going to actually do is drag this cavalry division behind the enemy, right? We've got this 3rd division. I'm gonna put it in a big long line behind the enemy, which is probably strange to you. Those guys are going to get off their horses soon. Now the 6th and 7th, both of those are javelin divisions, the Jav Cav and the skirmishers. Those guys are boring in here towards the top, and that's going to help because they'll dump javelins on the enemy. This 3rd division we'll put in a big long line. And the 2nd and 3rd division, we're going to dismount and have them attack on foot. Why is that more effective? Well, it's because, like I said, the AI with the spears doesn't work very well. Infantrymen work pretty well, right? They look for a target and then they fucking pound it until it gets killed. Here, our infantrymen now start trudging up the hill, yelling. And what we have done here is used our mobility with the cavalry to get behind the enemy. It's still not optimal, right? You have all these infantrymen pouring in. We don't have huge material advantages on the enemy. Now, I left 1 division of cavalry here in case archers leak out. I don't see any enemy archers leaking out, and so we don't really need them. Although, look at these fuckers. These guys trying to escape to the south. Let's take our 7th Cavalry. I wanted to keep 1 division on horse for precisely this, right? All these little pathetic archers looking for a spot to shoot. This guy's trying to pick up an arrow here before he gets killed. Now we're just going to drag this 7th division through here and harangue these archers. Now the death scroll on the right is not good, right? It's not a massacre. You could see it was much more effective for us to shoot the enemy with their little pathetic Santa hat tier 3 sturgeon archers than it is to attack him with Drudzinic champions. That is just an unfortunate reality of Bannerlord. Archers are too strong, or spear infantry or spear cavalry rather are too weak. Actually, spear infantry is too weak as well. And this, I think, is a perfect example. Now, maybe somebody out there has mastered spear cavalry tactics. I'd love to see a video if somebody has. If somebody knows of a link where they're just dominating everything with mounted spear cavalry, Drudzinic champions, I'd love to see it. Now, don't show me them beating a bunch of recruits, right? They need to be defeating professional armies like we're facing here. But I just don't think it's a thing. I've tried many different things, and this is about the most successful, right? We're winning, but barely, right? This is actually worse, I think, than our infantry round. What do we have? 250 survivors with our infantry here, right? So this is tier 5 and tier 6, mostly cavalry. A much more expensive army, by the way. This army would be a lot more expensive from a dinar's perspective, and only 120, 130 survivors. Not good at all. All right, now let's show you how bad this is, right? Let's see how we're gonna do this. Let's just have the AI charge here in this situation. The same situation we just had. Our plan is to crush them with our cavalry and sweep up the rest in a follow-up attack. I don't think they're gonna win. They're charging uphill. The enemy's shooting at them. But the most important thing is that the AI just doesn't use their spear cavalrymen well, and I don't expect them to win this. Again, even though we have a better army, from a power bar perspective, from a bunch of different perspectives. In we charge, and the enemy gets decimated by our heavy cavalry. Nah, actually, there's an awful lot of red death spam as our cavalrymen get ignobly dismounted and killed by archers and infantrymen. They're sort of charging in a big chaotic mix here. And that's an awful lot of red death spam, right? It does look like we're getting crushed here with our cavalry charge. This commander says, this incompetent commander, charge. Now they're blowing the sad horn. Our plan is to fall back in formation and fight another day. Even though we have a better army here, a higher ranking army, the AI didn't just lose, we got obliterated. Over half of the enemies survived that. All right, it's time to rant a little bit. Hopefully there's some Tail Worlds guys watching, and I mean this in the very best way. We love your game, but you guys please boost the shit out of spear cavalry. Give them more charge damage, right? Or make it so that they one-shot archers when they hit them with the spear. That's how it would be in real life. Now let's try a scenario here, right? Let's try the exact same situation, and we'll give the enemy almost all archers, right? So this should be destruction. It should look like the end of the first battle in Braveheart, where the cavalry just ride down all the archers. Our cavalry will ride them down like grass. And I don't think that's going to be the result. Now, the archers have virtually no support here, right? They have like 100 infantrymen trying to hold off this horde of cavalry. The Drudzinic champions are just charging through the archers' lines, but I don't see the archers melting. In fact, I see it the other way around. The Drudzinic champions are taking losses. Now, the infantry, the Sturgeon infantry here is doing a good job plowing in there. There's a nice wave of green, so maybe they will win. But the archers are now spread out. They're starting to spray everything on the battlefield. We're starting to suffer serious losses, and this is another loss, right? Our plan is to fall back in formation and fight another day. This is 75 to 80% elite units, and we got destroyed. All right, so let's try, how do I do this? Let's see. Let's give them almost all heavy cavalry, so elite, Imperial Elite Cataphract, and let's try this. We will be in charge of archers. We will, in fact, let's be badly outnumbered here. Let's give them 100 more units than us. We have nothing but pathetic little Santa Hat archers and a little tiny amount of infantry and cavalry. Well, the first thing I got to do is I got to be in charge. Give me a second here. We will change that. What we're going to do is basic C formation with a square and 2 cav defending lines. I'm essentially going to create a death trap for the cavalry. And I've done similar simulations to this. I think we're going to win. In fact, we might even be wildly successful. And you should never be able to win this, right? If cavalry can't win this situation in an open field battle against mostly archers, who the fuck do they defeat? Nobody. That's the answer. Recruits, maybe. Okay, so 5th Division is a little stronger, and again, we're just forming this cup formation. That helps us get flanking fire on the enemy, and our 5th Archers, the deepest set there, are somewhat protected. Cav wings protecting both edges of the archers, and you know what? I'm just going to sit here in the square and observe the death spam as our archers destroy everything in sight. Enemy cavalry's coming up, right? And theoretically, it's powerful, right? 114 elite cataphracts, 113 armored cataphract. Here they come. Our forces get swept into the dirt and annihilated. Nah, they get stood up by our square. They're being shot to pieces. I can't see anything, but I'm just looking up in the upper right-hand corner, and all I see is horsemen being destroyed by little Santa Hat archers. It's an execution so far. They're haplessly trying to attack our square. Our infantry line here of 30 guys is holding out against all these cavalrymen. It's carnage, but there's a massive amount of horsemen dying. Now, their infantry is going to reach us soon. In fact, here they are. I'm just gonna, I'll just pull this character out to the RTS mod. That way he doesn't get killed, and we can watch the rest of this massacre here, right? And indeed, this is a massacre. This is all archers, Santa Hat little, and these are by most accounts the worst archers in the game. These are sturgeon archers, the little Santa Hat motherfuckers. By far, by most people's opinions, the worst archers in the game here, and we're outnumbered by 20% against elite cataphract, and we just blew them off the map. So that hopefully that's all the evidence that you ever need to see, that at least in the short term, heavy cavalry, heavy spear cavalry is flawed. Please don't use them. It's not that they're not worthwhile. You just don't want a lot of them in your army, as I emphasized in our first episode, the Novice to Napoleon Tactics series. All right, we are going to do some more advanced tactics, but I think I will break this episode off here. We're going to do more advanced tactics on how to dethrone highly entrenched, powerful armies that outnumber us, but that's a whole nother challenge, right? That's much more difficult. Of course, if you want to see more from this series, you want to subscribe. You Tail Worlds fellas, if there's any guys that are watching this, please make the changes to heavy cavalry and make them stronger or make archers weaker. Leave any comments or criticism you fellas might have, and with all that said, I will see you friends next time.